Talk Radio.
Christo's Funky Weekend.
Access all arguments.
Upper class chic, spiced with cheek.
Weekend breakfast with Christo on Talk Radio.
The home of common sense.
Interesting story on the front page this morning about the lateral flow test situation. To talk about that and a couple of the other big stories of the week in Westminster, let's talk to Portia Berry-Kilby, the political commentator. Morning to you, Portia.
Morning, Christo. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Firstly, I suppose I would presume you'd agree it's time to get this show back on the road and perhaps roll back some of this lateral flow testing.
I think it's a good sign, especially current symptoms of COVID. It's much like the common cold. It is about time we start treating it like the common cold. Of course, I think one major concern would come from unvaccinated people who so far have the option of providing a negative lateral flow to enter certain venues. If lateral flow tests become unavailable or only available if you have symptoms, what happens to them? Will they have to pay? Will this create further divide in how they are treated as opposed to the boosted or just double vaccinated?
Well, I suppose, yes, and they'll say, well, look, you don't need the lateral flow, go and get your vaccine. And a lot of people who are on Twitter this morning are saying to me, actually, look, you this is going to be, Colin says removal of lateral flow tests, but not the vaccine passport. This is the government's move to enforce jabs. So, a lot of people making the point that it's, all well and good getting rid of lateral flows, but the vaccine passports look like they're here to stay.
Which is a pretty flawed train of thought on the government side, especially as we've seen over Christmas, that people vaccinated or unvaccinated can get COVID and test positive. So it seems kind of a kick in the face for the science, which supposedly we're all meant to be following.
All right, pretty grim reading as well on the subject of COVID for Boris Johnson as well, when you consider that now the front page of the Times suggesting that his wife attended yet another booze up during the first lockdown. This was once again in the Downing Street party. There's an email apparently which has now been confirmed by 3 different sources saying that there was a bring your own bottle drinks party, and the email is key evidence in a sleaze inquiry being run by the Whitehall enforcer Sue Gray. Let's not forget that she is the second person who is running the sleaze inquiry, because the first person was found to be at one of the Downing Street parties that Boris Johnson denied had taken place. Will this make any difference to the sleaze inquiry? Will it make any difference to people, or are they at a stage now where they just roll their eyes when they hear that Boris Johnson has lied?
It's pretty funny that another party is still once again news, because I think everyone knows that COVID rules have been broken. Of course, this happened earlier in the pandemic, happened in May. Carrie is confirmed to be there. Boris Johnson most likely was there. Downing Street has not denied it. And when it's bring your own bottle, it can't really be disguised as a work meeting. That said, the former string of parties that Boris or Downing Street have hosted haven't actually done Boris in, as many thought would be the case. It is a kick to his integrity, but Boris wasn't ever elected on having a stellar record for personal integrity. So I don't think people can really be surprised. And at the end of the day, everyone has broken COVID rules themselves. It's obviously different when it's coming from the people.
So do you not think that this matters, that he potentially might have had yet another party that he attended? Do you not think that matters particularly?
I think it will disgruntle voters for sure. I think it's once again another example of double standards, especially May 2020. It was early on in lockdown. At the same time, Boris Johnson has ridden the tide of the previous slew of accusations. And I don't think it's really, if you voted for Boris on his personality and character, this isn't going to change anything. I think it's just another nail in the coffin of double standards and COVID rules not actually being that much sense. And people were themselves having get-togethers across the country in summer. Of course, that's different when you're not setting the rules, but I think they know deep down the rules didn't make full sense and people weren't going to stick to them.
But they're the people enforcing them. This was in
Well,
May.
yeah.
This was May in 2020, a month after Dominic Cummings's Barnard Castle eye test debacle. I mean, it does scream once again of what can we get away with? How can we get away with this? Doesn't it? I mean, it's easy with hindsight to say, look, it doesn't matter. But at that point, we were all locked in our houses.
Yes, and absolutely, it reeks of double standards. And I think there is right to be appalled and outraged with Boris and his advisors who were flouting the rules at the time that they were imposing very draconian measures on us. Is this really going to change the state of play? I think there's been a lot thrown at Boris recently and he's still come out more or less fine. Of course, his approval is at a record low, but he's staying in. He'll be in for at least a few more months, if not like a couple more years.
I dread that thought that we might have him for another couple of years. And I hate the fact as well that everyone's like, oh my word, he's standing firm, he's being Churchillian, he's amazing. No, he's doing what he should have done, and that is not hit the panic button with Omicron that we knew from data from South Africa, and I say that cautiously and carefully, was showing it was more mild. He panicked.
Entirely. And the excessive measures he then reintroduced in December are still here to stay. They were extended. So although he's not introduced more, he hasn't repealed what he introduced. I think that's more of a cause for public outcry than party from over a year ago.
Another outcry for the party, and Nicola, I'll get your view after we've spoken to Portia about this. Be a true Tory, Boris is told, or you're finished. Now, this is from Lord Frost saying this. We also saw Jacob Rees-Mogg this week bucking the trend from the government, saying, look, this social care levy, this tax rise, this is not the right policy for the Conservatives. And Lord Frost is essentially saying, look, you know, you're being entirely unconservative by all of these tax rises, this complete authoritarian state situation, this complete lack of ideology that Boris Johnson seems to live by. Again, you know, is this going to be a problem for Boris Johnson? Is this once again reflecting that perhaps the 1922 committee will start, I don't know, rumblings about getting rid of him because of the fact that we seem to be very rudderless at the moment?
I think very much so. And it's not just a problem for Boris Johnson, it's a problem for the Conservative Party. If the Conservative Party isn't the party of low taxation, then who is? And what does the Conservative Party stand for, especially today? And at the time when energy prices are hiking for customers and then national insurance is set to increase, there needs to be something done, especially when the national insurance hike is deemed to pay for the NHS backlog. But famously, historically, throwing more money at the NHS doesn't work. So I think there's going to be even more opposition to having increased cost of living when you don't know it's going to really solve the problem that you've been told it will.
And so what do you think that he should do?
I think he should make sure that what the national insurance increase is going to pay for will actually work, or cut various taxes that they could to improve the cost of living. It's all very well and good saying he's going to level up the country by building leisure centres here, there or everywhere, but provided the general public have like the strain on their pockets, he's not going to win any favour there. And it's not exactly levelling up if you've got this leisure centre but you can't afford the swimming lesson.
It is ridiculous. Really good to talk to you, Portia. I'm not sure we'll agree with everything about, you know, us all having broken COVID rules, but thank you for taking the time this morning here on Talk Radio with a roundup of some of the big stories. Portia Berry-Kilby